Everything has just got more expensive. So let me give you an accountant's view of why. The latest numbers are out and things are getting on average about 3.8% more expensive. And this is what's known as inflation. And as business accountants, we see small business owners' numbers every day. And I can tell you, costs are rising. And in response, business owners are having to raise price. And by far the largest cost that seems to be having this effect is to do with how much it costs to hire somebody. Now, if you didn't know, the government increased what is effectively an employment tax known as employers' national insurance. And they did this from April this year. And this is the bit that employers pay above the wage they pay to their team members. So for example, if their team member's on 30k, they're likely paying about another £3,750 on top in this tax. And that's about £1,000 more than it was the previous year. And that's just that one employee. And remembering as well, for a lot of small businesses, you're also paying £900 for their pension on top. Now, thrown in the mix with all this is the fact that their minimum wages went up as well in April quite substantially. And the reason this affects a lot of small businesses is not necessarily because they're paying right at the bottom. It's the knock-on effect of the people being paid above them. So if you imagine, if you've got a team member that's, say, a supervisor that's on a little bit more money than the person below them, and then the minimum wage comes and gets massively hiked, the difference between those two pay rates is really minimal, and that can cause a lot of problems. And then generally what happens as an employer is you raise the person's wages above them to make sure that you're maintaining that gap. And in some businesses we saw that actual minimum wage hike meant that those team members actually jumped their supervisor in terms of pay rate. And then that needed quite a substantial adjustment to everybody above them to bring it more in line with the responsibilities that those team members had. And of course, you're paying now more wages, more tax on the wages, more pension on the wages. It just gets astronomically more expensive. And this is where the problem lies. And you might be thinking, I've seen it in the comments before, people are like, oh, greedy business owners, they should be paying a fair wage. Of course they should, and no one's saying they shouldn't. But I will die on this hill and I will tell you that in our job every day, we see the true profits that most small business owners make. And I can tell you, it's not like your local coffee shop owner is driving around in a Ferrari. They're probably working 6 days a week for like 20k. So what happens is they have to rise prices or they're going to go out of business. And if you are one of those people that's now going to tell me that they should just be better at business, there's only so much you can charge for a cup of coffee. Now, of course, where inflation is concerned, there are more factors in this. This is overly simplistic. I'm just telling you what we see in terms of what has the most impact on those price rises. So avoiding politics as much as possible. Unfortunately, in my opinion, these rising taxes really have had a negative effect on growth for small businesses. And of course, ultimately, the only people that end up paying for all this is us as consumers, because everything goes up and we have to pay these new prices.